are watching Channel Adrian TV.
Yo, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, X, welcome back to another reaction video. And y'all know on this channel, I do police body cam relationships, but I also do sneaker reviews and talk about sneakers. And I have a reaction video that talks about a popular reseller who recently just got put in jail for running a big resale scam. And the name of this video is "This popular sneaker reseller just got sentenced to federal prison." Chance does a lot of dope videos revolving around sneaker content, and I have reviewed 2 videos of his before. I'll make sure to leave the links in the description, but let's get into the video.
In sneaker culture, trust is everything. You're not just buying sneakers, you're buying promises. And for years, tens of thousands of people trusted one name, Zadehkicks.
We're talking Zadehkicks.
And Zadehkicks has been sentenced. 2 Eugene residents just pleaded guilty to the $80 million crime.
But today, that...
And if you're around sneakers, you know about Zadehkicks. I've heard about him for a long time. I never did business with him or bought shoes from him, but if you're into sneakers and sneaker culture, you've heard of the name. May not know him by face, but you definitely heard of the name. But 80 million, that's crazy.
name is attached to the biggest fraud case that the sneaker culture has ever seen. The former owner of Zadehkicks has now been officially sentenced to federal prison. Let's get into this. Zadehkicks was an Oregon-based sneaker reselling business founded in 2013 by one man, Michael Zadeh. Before the business, Michael worked at the Nike store in Eugene, Oregon, which was only about an hour away from the Nike headquarters. But his time working for Nike was very short-lived after he got caught using his employee discount to purchase sneakers and resell them for his own personal gain. After getting fired from Nike, he learned the game, purchase limited edition and collectible sneakers, and resell them online on eBay. And this was a model that exploded alongside sneaker hype in the 2010s. This also created the boom of sneaker events such as SneakerCon, which are essentially just a buy-sell-trade convention of people with limited edition sneakers reselling them to each other. And in just a few years, Zadehkicks gained the reputation of a high-volume reseller, which attracted sneakerheads, collectors, and resellers looking to secure hype releases without competing in raffles or waiting in any sort of lines. And what made Zadehkicks his most money and his popularity was pre-orders. Customers would pay up front, sometimes months in advance, for sneakers that hadn't even released yet.
And I remember I actually seen that site and went to that site, but like I said, I never purchased any, but I can remember doing those 2000s and, mid 2015s and so on and so forth of seeing Zadehkicks really just explode because people getting more into sneakers, just seeing the sneaker culture pretty much hit its apex, I would say 2010, 2015, 16, 17, 18 area where I could tell he was making a lot of money because I would see those pre-orders and people were paying them. Now me, like I said, there was a moment of time when I stopped buying shoes, but the shoes I did buy, I had some plugs through the store, so I was still able to get them even though if they were sought after. So I never had to purchase from Zadehkicks, but I can remember that time.
Let's say a sneaker retails on Nike for $180. People know that sneaker is going to be almost impossible to get for retail when they drop on the website. They're going to sell out in just a few seconds, and then they're going to go on to resell for $500 or $600. So what Zadehkicks would offer was a pre-order that you could pay less than what the resale is projected to be. Let's just say $300 to $400, and you could get as many pairs as you wanted. It was unknown how he was getting these sneakers, but with his Nike background, people just didn't question it. And for a while, it actually worked and it was a legitimate business. Orders were shipped, the trust was growing, and Zadehkicks positioned himself as a legitimate player in the sneaker game. But in 2020, he actually got exposed in the weirdest way possible. So, at the end of the year, StockX actually released their top sellers on the platform. And Zadehkicks happened to be one of the biggest buyers on StockX, which didn't really make sense. Because his whole pre-order thing was that you would be able to get them from him at cheaper than the StockX resale price. So it wouldn't make sense for him to buy sneakers on StockX and lose money selling them to his pre-order customers. But at the time, people didn't really question it. Beginning his early as January 2020, ZadehKicks dramatically expanded his pre-order system. Customers were encouraged to pay up front for large quantities of sneakers before the public release dates, sometimes before Nike had even posted the official images of what the shoe's even gonna look like. But people trusted him, they got their orders, they made their money, nobody cared. And this allowed ZadehKicks to collect massive amounts of cash before the sneakers even dropped. But according to federal court documents, there was one major problem. Michael knew that he could not fulfill these orders. But despite this, ZadehKicks continued advertising, selling, and collecting money for pre-orders, while he was fully aware that the inventory didn't exist. But instead of slowing down, he upped the operation even more. You see, ZadehKicks promised a few-month window before you would receive these sneakers. And basically what he would do was just buy the sneakers on StockX and send them to these 4-month-old pre-orders.
Which I get what he's saying now. In other words, he would make people wait 3 to a few months, don't know the month time span. So he would get all the money from the customers thinking he's waiting for the inventory. But in actuality, he's just going to StockX, buying those inventory from StockX and then send it to the customers. But since he was able, from that point on, probably had a credit card, that had maybe 6 figures worth or even 7 figures worth of credit. So he would just run that, get the money, rinse and repeat. The only thing is that's why a lot of people's shoes would be late. A lot of people wouldn't even get their shoes at all. But he probably at a certain point started making so much money because of that. He probably didn't even care to even respond to it. Probably just kept on going. Because I know a lot of people do that with t-shirts. Instead of making t-shirts made, they'll do pre-orders. And then from that orders, that will determine how much shirts they need to make, so they won't waste any money. But he was doing that, but with shoes. But the thing is, if you don't have enough to fulfill all the inventory, people are going to want their money back.
So the older customers got their pairs and everybody was happy, except for the new customers. But he still had just a few months to figure out what to do with those. And this new pre-order money was used to cover these older obligations, creating a cycle where cash flow replaced actual inventory. But by April 2022, the damage was staggering. In 2022, ZadehKicks owed customers more than $65 million worth of undelivered sneakers. While customers waited on sneakers that would never arrive, Michael Zadeh was also getting fraudulent bank loans. According to prosecutors, Zadeh conspired to submit altered and false financial documents, including modified bank statements to financial institutions. Basically, he was making it look like on paper that he was making more money than he was so that he could get bigger loans from the banks. But more than 15 separate loan applications were all involved. And basically, these were used to conceal liabilities, inflate the company's financial health, and misrepresent the reality of what he was actually doing. And due to this, he was able to get an extra $15 million from all of these loans.
And that's what I figured, because some cash flow had to come from somewhere. So he was able to falsify documents to get that credit history, to get that line of credit, to get those big loans. At some point, he had to know something was going to give, because if the orders weren't fulfilled.
At this point, ZadehKicks wasn't just a failing sneaker business. It became a multi-layered financial fraud operation. While customers waited and banks were misled, ZadehKicks was living a lavish lifestyle. And federal investigators later seized millions of dollars in cash and luxury goods that included high-end watches, jewelry, and hundreds of handbags. And agents also seized nearly $7.5 million when it came to ZadehKicks' house, his luxury watches, and exotic vehicles. And just a few of these cars included a Bentley, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, and a Porsche. There's also a photo of one of his blacked out McLarens on the internet. I don't know if that was seized or not.
And that's crazy, because all that money, if he didn't live a lavish lifestyle, it still probably could have been a profitable business and could have worked to where he could have still sent those customers their orders. Now, he probably wouldn't be able to afford to lavish lifestyle to have a Ferrari and Bentley, but it could have been like I said, a successful business, because t-shirt companies do this with their pre-orders. But the thing is, the customers still get their shirts.
But I'm probably assuming so. And as the FBI put it, while the defendant was living in luxury, he took money from kids and adults for goods that he was never going to deliver. But the craziest part of this all was in sneaker forums, there was people actually backing him up and defending him. In the sneaker forums, yes, there was hundreds of people that never got their orders and were out thousands and thousands of dollars. But there was also hundreds, if not thousands of people that were rooting for him and stating that his business was legitimate. And there was plenty of sneakerheads that actually were able to show receipts of sneakers that they bought from Zadeh Kicks and actually received and ended up making money on. So people were torn on, is this even legitimate, or does this have to just do with the banks and not the sneaker business? It started a war in the sneaker community because it seemed like 30 to 40% of people actually backed his business while the other 60 to 70% were out all this money. But eventually reality caught up. Orders stopped shipping, refunds stopped processing, and Zadeh Kicks went dark. And as you can imagine, people were outraged. After collecting all this money for pre-orders, he just shuts down everything and nobody hears from him again. Some victims reported losses that delayed home purchases, retirements, and engagements. You see, people that own resale stores would use Zadeh Kicks' service because they were able to get tens or hundreds of pairs of these sneakers to fill up their sneaker store. And I said this in the last video I made about Zadeh Kicks, but just to put it into perspective, Zadeh Kicks was caught with 600,000 pre-orders for the cool gray 11s. And for those of you who don't know, only about 900,000 pairs.
I'm about to say, how?
So how could Zadeh Kicks even source this many pairs in like the entire world? We're not just talking about the United States here. Well, what he did was he sourced 6,000 pairs, which I'm assuming was through StockX or Goat or eBay or whatever that may be. And out of these 600,000 pairs at probably $200 to $250 a piece, he allegedly paid for 6,000 of these orders to be shipped and fulfilled. So there was a few thousand customers that were happy and actually on his side when it came to the sneaker forums and backing him up. But there was other hundreds of thousands of people that never got their pairs. So you can imagine thousands of people trusted him while hundreds of thousands of people didn't. But doing this, he was still able to somehow maintain a decent reputation. But that was just one specific pre-order. He did pre-orders for just about every hype sneaker that came out. But to put into perspective of how much money this guy was making at one point, 600,000 pre-orders at probably $200
That's crazy.
to $240 per pair, I would assume. That is a lot of money. I mean, the sneakers themselves, the Cool Gray 11s, retailed in 2021 for $225 plus tax. So I'm assuming his pre-order price would be somewhere in that ballpark, give or take, up or down. But this dude was making insane money. But by May 2022, Zadeh Kicks was officially finished. What once looked like a sneaker empire collapsed under its own weight. And by July 29, 2022, Michael Zadeh was formally charged with wire fraud, conspiracy to commit bank fraud, and money laundering. And as of just recently, he pleaded guilty to all of these charges, and the federal court in Oregon sentenced him to 70 months in federal prison, 5 years of supervised release probation, and he had to forfeit even more of his assets that came to a total of $15 million. And the Zadeh Kicks case fundamentally changed sneaker culture forever. It exposed how easy that hype can override due diligence, and how the sneaker resale business can operate without meaningful oversight. We've been seeing this with these whole train robberies and all these LA sneaker stores getting busted. It seems like Nike and the whole sneaker resale business is cracking down when it comes to fraud. I mean, the Cool Kicks case was a big one. This is one of the most popular sneaker stores in the world, and they got raided for stolen sneakers, as well as a few other warehouses and that house that was in LA that got raided for stolen goods. It seems like federal authorities are making it very clear, and that is that sneaker culture is not outside of the law. And that pretty much wraps up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I know I've already made a video.
I'll leave the link to the video in the description. And that's sad, but I do understand why people would pay for those pre-orders, but me personally, if I'm paying a pre-order price, I better get the shoe quickly. If it's going to be a few months, I wouldn't even wait that long. But during that time, especially 2011, 2013, people were just hungry for those shoes, so people would do those pre-orders. That was one thing I remember going to that site and seeing the pre-order wait and stuff. I was like, I'm not waiting a few months for my shoes. I'd rather just go to StockX or eBay myself or Goat or whatever, just to get the shoe faster than that, because I didn't see a point of, say if the shoe was coming out for $200, pay $280 or $300 with everything in tax, and then on StockX, let's say it's for $290. I'd rather just go to StockX so I could get it faster than wait for those few months and pay the extra, what, $40 or $50 if I really wanted the shoe that bad. But y'all, let me know what you think about this, and do you think more people are going to go down as far as reselling. In my personal opinion, I do think so, because a lot of those shoes, as you saw at the ending of this video, are technically stolen. That's why I don't really buy from a lot of people unless I know it's coming from an authorized Nike source. I won't buy from them, because I have had people reach out, but if I can't prove that they actually got it from Nike or got a relationship with Nike, it's no point for me to deal with them. But if you do, that's up on you. Y'all remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.